Thanks for coming to the first RIEEE webinar. We are starting this so that we can just open up a dialogue and give people a kind of entry point to chat with us about all the things we can do together. So we plan on doing this monthly, and at the end we'll talk about different formats and open up ways for people to give us ideas on what they think the formats and content should be. But right now I'm going to share my screen and let's see. Just make sure I share the right one. Good morning. I'm Christine Hendren. I'm the director of the Research Institute for Environment, Energy, and Economics, or we call it RIEEE, because that's much better. So here is our brand new emblem, and we love it because it just shows the interconnectedness of the 3 E's: environment, energy, economics, and then we think of equity and education, of course, is underpinning all of these. All right. We're just going to cover some basics today as we kind of open up this conversation. We want to talk about why we're here as Institute and the centers that make up the Institute, who we are, what we do, how we're doing it, and ways that everybody across campus can engage with us and shape our evolution. And we want to think about not only what we want to say to campus, but also hear back from the Appalachian state community of what are the big things you want to do in sustainability research. So we'll start that here, but then also hopefully you'll get some ideas that you can bring to us throughout as a reaction to this. So, okay, starting why we're here. Fundamentally, it's because there are these huge, complex, wicked problems facing our world, and they require interdisciplinary responses. What's not written there is that I think some of the best students and the best faculty are intrinsically motivated to really throw their energy and their life behind addressing these problems. And so because of that, App State has what we need to address them. We have talent, skills, and we have the mission mandate, which is non-trivial. You know, not a lot of universities have that written in, and we hear from Lee Ball in the Office of Sustainability that something upwards of 50–60% of students claim that being in the mission is why they chose App State to come to. So I know it was huge for me coming here. So we have what it takes to move the needle on these huge challenges and to prepare students to creatively address them as well. So we are here as RIEEE and centers to help maximize our research potential in the face of these challenges and maximize our impact that we can have by supporting and strengthening and amplifying all the research that you as faculty and students are doing already. And we'll talk about ways that we're going to do this through assisting and enhancing and leading. That's kind of how we've categorized the different ways that we can support. And we do that in bringing all 3 E's and beyond, including equity, to address these various challenges. And right here, I'm listing things that they're expertise on that several of you on the call already work on, and that we have a lot to brag about, really, and to shore up everything across, you know, climate, carbon, ecosystem services, to renewable energy, built environment, sustainable innovation, and a lot of different application areas, and then social and economic equity. So that's why we're here. And the next thing is kind of who we are. So who we are, a lot of people across campus may be new to understanding this structure because we have an alphabet soup given our big, broad mission. And so I'm the director of the Institute, and within the Institute, we have 3 affiliated centers. So Southern Appalachian Environmental Research and Education Center, or SAEREC, and the Appalachian Energy Center, and the Center for Economic Analysis or Economic Research and Policy Analysis, or CERPA. And so Steve Siegel, Jamie Russell, and Ash Morgan will each, as directors, have a second to tell you about their organizations too, as part of this. We are also propelled by and kind of enabled really by excellent programming staff and research affiliates. And so our programming staff includes Grace Plummer, who's on the call, as research and program development for both serving all of the centers, working in RIEEE and working also directly in the Energy Center. Caitlin Manili is the program coordinator. So if you have post-award support for a grant, you work with her to administer that. And Janet Miller is the program and outreach coordinator, and she works with the Energy Center on a lot of different things, making those happen. We also have RIEEE scholars with a lot of different collaboration models, and we have the dotted line to show that we're open to more collaboration models, including hosting visiting scholars, hosting maybe partially supported scholars with different units. Who we have right now is we're extremely lucky to have Greg Marland, who's on the call, as an adjunct research professor. He's also affiliated in the department, my home department of geological and environmental sciences. And he's got world-renowned expertise in carbon emissions and carbon data, and is just wonderful at student mentorship and working with a bunch of different people. So we're lucky for that. We also have a postdoctoral researcher funded out of the Energy Center, Rodrigo Mercado Fernandez, and he works on a variety of issues that Jamie will mention. And then we also have a research assistant, Hey Young Kim, who works very closely with our Nexus facility in a lot of different things. So we've got a big variety of folks that that can work with us, and they're all a little bit different models. So we want you to keep that in mind and just understanding how we have a lot of flexibility with how we affiliate. And then who else we are is the campus and the people that we are serving and helping maximize and build up. So that's faculty who select RIEEE or one of our centers as the admin unit for their external funding proposals. That's also all of our concert funding grantees. So concert, which Grace will talk about later, is named by Greg, the Conducting Complex Research Together grants, which are interdisciplinary, and several people on here have been awardees of those. It's also the students that work on our projects, and something that we're excellent at App State is doing really meaningful research that integrates undergraduates in ways that really set us apart. Also great research with our excellent graduate students and our handful of postdocs, which we hope to support and help grow that number. And so we are looking at ways to affiliate or to codify the student affiliation. And so we're calling all of these folks RIEEE student scholars. We've got our new space that we talked about, I think, before we started recording, and we've got an undergraduate student working lab and a graduate student working lab. So they can kind of come and have a cohort together. It's also all of our working groups, and that includes our historical clusters, as well as new working groups. Currently starting to affiliate, and then those that we will affiliate. Next week, we are kicking off a open invite session just on the working group model, and we'll also record that for anyone interested. But here you see a bunch listed, and I won't read them all out to you, but they touch all different parts of campus. What you'll notice is they're mostly nucleated around common questions, interesting questions. So we ask questions like, how do we grow Boone in a way that is not going to hurt Boone? How do we take better care of our ecosystem services in the area? And those kind of things, by asking those questions, how do we have sustainable agriculture? People in all different disciplines can identify with that question and see how they can anchor into it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then again, I keep kind of hammering home this point, but we just really want to say that this is the start of an inclusive conversation. So we're also open to new partnering modalities. And we'll look forward to thinking about those. So in this section of who we are, we want to have a chance for all the centers that make up our IEEE to talk about that. And so now I'm going to pass it off to our Director of SAEREC, Steve Siegel.
Hey folks, how you doing? A little bit of history here. SAEREC has been around for quite some time, but unlike the other centers, we're not a recognized center within the UNC system. And that is, as we talk about goals in here and things like that, that's certainly one of the things that I'd like to be having SAEREC work toward. Because our mission, I think, is really central to things that go far beyond our IEEE to the entire campus level, and even open us up for really good collaborations, I think, across various institutions within the UNC system. But the mission is basically to do state-of-the-art research, as it is with our IEEE overall. Obviously, we're going to be mostly addressing environmental issues. We want to take a very global look at this in terms of what types of issues we are interested in and seek to do work in. But clearly, these global issues come home to roost, and we want to be looking at solutions as well, and particularly in terms of regional solutions here in the Southern Appalachians, starting with Western North Carolina. Clearly, going by our name, we'd like to be involved in environmental education. That's something that has lagged a bit over the last few years in terms of our activity there, but I'm looking for opportunities to pick that up. So our focal efforts reflect that mission. Again, developing innovative and interdisciplinary research themes. A lot of that would be associated with various working groups and trying to bring people together to catalyze these types of research associated with different themes. We obviously, in doing that, SAEREC and our IEEE collectively are trying to develop research teams, obviously aimed at emerging research topics, things that we think are going to be important, and obviously anything that is of ongoing importance for the Southern Appalachian region. We certainly, in doing that, we want to be able to try and support faculty and certainly students, as Christine was saying. All of us on campus here, or most of us, I think, are involved in student research, and it's something that we do well, and we certainly don't want to forget them. And then finally, obviously, seeking ways to take things that we learn about the environment here in the Southern Appalachians and turn it into impactful environmental education. And I think that that brings us full circle in terms of the themes that we're after. Things that we are really good at are some of the things we've done in the past, such as water-land interactions. That's affiliated with the App-Aqua research group, encompasses a lot of the work that's been done there. I think this is clearly something that at a local scale, all up to a global scale, water-land interactions are exceedingly important. And we've got an interesting group and a diverse group here on campus that can grow and expand. And I think this should continue to be an area of excellence within SAEREC and our IEEE. In addition to that, air quality and interaction between atmosphere and terrestrial systems is something that has been a focus of Apple Air. Again, a group that's been around on campus for some time. Their membership comes and goes, and as people come and go and things like that, but that happens everywhere. And I think that's a group that has lots of potential to keep on going. Another group that's relatively new is environmental health. This is something that I think is clearly gaining momentum, has been gaining momentum, is going to continue to gain momentum at all scales in terms of funding at the state, national, and global level. We actually have a group here on campus. Maggie Sugg seems to be kind of at the center of that, working with environmental health, but she has colleagues scattered across campus, and they've done a tremendously good job of getting off the ground. And we'd like to help nurture that and extend that as well. Then biodiversity conservation, I think that's an area we need to work with. And well, as Mike knows, that's something that we can really do well starting in the Department of Biology. We have a lot of individuals in the department who are have expertise in various taxonomic groups and are interested in conservation. What we haven't done really is bring those people together as a functional group to address broader issues in biodiversity and conservation. And more importantly, from my point of view, is that we can't just have that centered in biology. Obviously, biodiversity conservation has linkages to all sorts of economic, social, and as well as environmental issues. Now, I skipped over land use change there, partly because, well, we don't have a specific working group on that, but I think it's an area that we need to develop excellence in because it underlies a lot of these other types of efforts. Now, I've mentioned most of the working groups there with AppleAir, AppAqua, Environmental Health. What I didn't mention, though, is that we need to be, and I think are starting to get a toehold here in the concept of ecosystem services. This, I think, is one of the most exciting things we're thinking about right now. We're starting a small group this semester composed of myself, Maggie Sugg, and Bill Anderson, and looking to expand to include other people. The idea of ecosystem services, or things that we get from the environment, can be an extremely broad and encompassing topic. Quantification of ecosystem services is important, but also there's the valuation of ecosystem services. And this is a good example of the potential for the different centers in RIEEE to actually interact well. Clearly, quantification of, or evaluation of ecosystem services becomes an economic question. And obviously sustainability, as Christine has mentioned earlier, the idea of sustainability and sustainable production of ecosystem services is really important. So I think this is an exciting thing that we're starting up, and a place that we hope to get lots of participation across campus, and to provide some leadership across campus in terms of this as a unifying theme that can be a project that goes far beyond the center and reaches across the university. Obviously, we have to connect with people if we're going to do these types of things. And there's lots of ways to do that. And clearly it starts with personal interest in collaboration. And that can start as just an interest in joining one of these groups, existing groups, or actually collaborating on beginning a new research project. We'd like to try and help support that sort of stuff. RIEEE and SAEREC and the other centers, or at least SAEREC anyway, are not really huge organizations. And I think one of the ways that we can extend our impact is through active involvement through faculty in departmental activities. And I think seminars are a good example of that. We should be working with the departments in departmental seminar series and stuff like that to co-sponsor seminars and to help encourage development of seminars that are in our areas of excellence or of interest to some of our working groups. Obviously, special topics courses could also be included in that as well. I've already mentioned joining an existing group or helping create a new working group is something that we would like to support as well. And obviously, I don't want to leave out the idea of kickstarting our efforts in environmental education. So lots of opportunities to get involved. If anyone that I haven't talked to before or don't talk to regularly would like to contact me about any of that, I'm easy to find. I'm in the biology department, and I look forward to talking with you. And that's it.
Thank you, Steve. I will move to the next E in our RIEEE, the energy, and pass it to Jamie Russell, Director of the Energy Center.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for showing up on this sunny day. Real quickly, the Appalachian Energy Center's been around right at 20 years now. It's formally founded in 2001 with a mission of supporting clean energy development across the state and thinking of clean energy in terms of both efficiency and renewables. We are we are partially supported by the State Energy Office with pass-through federal funds from the State Energy Plan to help connect the brains and the brains in the hands of the university with the mission of creating new and innovative energy research, clean energy research. And so that's one of our main focal efforts is research. And you always hear it being said, if you look at the Energy Center, like internal grants, there's always a clause that says, how will this benefit the residents or businesses of North Carolina, which is a nod to that, that the requirement from our support from the State Energy Office. But research, supporting and connecting our faculty and students with opportunities outside, but primarily promoting ideas inside for research activities. Education, there's also a leg of the stool for education. Primarily, we're focused primarily on professionals, and you saw Janet Miller on the slide, who leads our workshop series, and that's providing clean energy education topics with continuing education credits for professionals. So lawyers are one group, engineers, architects, general contractors. And we also have an internal seminar series for students where we bring in speakers, but the primary focus of that currently is professionals. And then a new area of development, which has been led by Grace, is the extension service. Thinking of modeled after an agricultural extension, how could we combine education of undergraduates with community need in clean energy? And our first focus is residential, looking at carrying out residential energy audits for households. There are regional action groups like WWAMI that provide services for those at 200% of the poverty level, the federal poverty level or below. And so we would hope to fill that gap above that, and also providing renewable energy resource assessments for PV or solar thermal or even small wind as well for households. So we've been put on hold a bit with COVID, not being able to carry students out to people's houses, but that's coming back online. We'll have the energy auditing happening in the spring semester. So looking at typical areas of excellence, buildings, energy efficiency, renewable energy technologies, we have a few working groups. There's some internals and external. If we do have a few connections, if you are thinking of looking at getting support or getting connected with the State Energy Office for projects or information or some kind of collaboration or national labs, we have a link with Oak Ridge and also oh goodness, my brain escapes me. The one that's in lovely Golden, Colorado, must be a Friday.
INREL, I think.
INREL, thank you, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I guess the fancy FFRDC threw me off. So thinking of that leads into connections. We do have some connections there we could provide and link with projects if you have any ideas. We also, as I mentioned before, we have these internal research development awards, typically $5,000. And so we're always seeking out new collaborations, and the broader the better, as far as if it focuses on energy with multidisciplinary partnerships in the university, that's great, or it can be a single pursuit as well. So once again, if you have questions or opportunities, reach out to us. I think just to give a flavor, a couple of things we have in the hopper right now. One is dealing with rural resiliency. It was a COVID CARES funding grant that allowed us to go out and install PV plus storage systems on low to moderate income households. And so the first goal there was to reduce the family's energy burdens. But the longer term goal for us is to gather data. How are the systems performing? The PV, how much sun are we gathering? Or what's the battery state of charge? If there's a power outage, how long are they able to operate and have drinking water and have critical power loads met? And so we're looking at that to be able to pursue some longer term research in rural resiliency, thinking of how, I think a lot of times urban urban environments are thought about more directly for resiliency, and rural is a bit different. You know, we're spatially we're more spread out and more prone to power outages as well, with longer, more diffuse transmission lines. So that's one opportunity. And so I think there are a lot of links with that we could talk about later. And another, just as an example, is a grant we put out to DOE. We're waiting to hear back on, that's hoping to provide make the campus a laboratory for grid interactive buildings. So basically connecting 60 buildings on campus to a smart control system that would allow us to be able to respond to grid needs. And hopefully, if DOE funds it, it would allow us to get some pretty large solar on campus and some pretty big battery storage as well. So those are a couple of example projects, and I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Those are some great examples you both give of ways people can connect in. So I'm going to pass it over to Ash Morgan now, Director of CERPA.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think I know pretty much everybody on the chat. Maybe it's a couple I don't. So, but I'm Ash Morgan. I'm in the economics department and also director of CERPA, Center for Economic Research and Policy Analysis. And so just to chat to you a little bit about CERPA, essentially the mission of the center is to produce good research in the areas of, anything with current economic and policy issues, or the goal to improve decision making. That's really what we're all about. And we have certain research programs, specifically in the areas of economic development, environment and energy, and experimental economics. So I'll talk a little bit about those. When I'm talking about CERPA, I've been a director of CERPA now for, I don't know, 10 years or so. And so when I talk about it, I always think there's two sides to the center. There's a sort of a non-traditional side and a traditional side. The non-traditional side, we're very lucky. Most centers in academic institutions in the US really just have this traditional side, which I'll talk about, is sort of economic impact studies, soft money contracts, bringing money into the center. But we have this really strong academic side. And that's because we have such a strong connection to the economics department, and we get to sort of piggyback off the fantastic work that the econ faculty do. And so this side of the center, we're looking at bringing money in through all of the big federal agencies, NSF, NOAA, EPA. I think David Dickinson, you're on this call, right? So David's been very successful bringing money through NSF and his sleep research. Big focus in this area is non-market valuation. And so this really leads us to the environmental natural resource side of the center. And I just sort of throw out a couple of examples of just some recent projects that have gone through the center or are going through the center. The economic impact of the hemlock woody adelgid in Western North Carolina was a study driven by John Whitehead. And that looked at the woody adelgid is an invasive species in this area, and it causes havoc with hemlock trees. And so the hemlock tree population is declining, and it's losing those ecosystem services that Steve just chatted about. And so this study looked at the willingness to pay for recreational trips into the area and the change in willingness to pay with increases in the woody adelgid population, essentially looking at lost economic value from a decrease in the hemlock population. And so that was a study that I think finished earlier this year. The other one I mentioned there is one that's sort of ongoing. It's started last year, and then it's survey based. So COVID sort of put the dampener on that one. So that's one that will get going again soon. Maybe Denny, maybe you want to talk about this one, because Denny Gunay is the one that's leading this project. It's the economic impact of coastal groundwater issues from sea level rise. And this has come from a concert grant. So we're hoping to do a pilot study and then look at a bigger pot of funding to develop it further. This is collaboration with Denny and some of the folks in the econ department, and also Bill Anderson in the Department of Geological and Environmental Sciences. And this is really in the area of climate change resiliency, looking at saltwater intrusion and rising groundwater tables, together with an increasing population and tourism in coastal communities. That's really increasing the need for these communities to deal with saltwater intrusion issues and adopt potable water and wastewater treatment technologies. So here we're combining non-market valuation with Bill's work on coastal groundwater modeling and examining how these increasing costs to potable water and wastewater treatment will affect both coastal homeowners and tourism in the area. So that's just a couple of examples, kind of non-market valuation side, that projects that are running through the center. Also, we were very lucky to have this, the experimental economics lab is under the umbrella of CERPA, and we have a really strong faculty in this area. And so just to give you an idea, I pulled the data this is from 2019 to 2020, that academic year. They ran almost 70 experimental sessions in the lab, over 1,000 student participants. And I think the average student walks away with about $15 to $20, something like that. And overall $20,000 to them in their earnings. And again, David Dickinson, who's on the chat, does a lot of work with the lab. Just one project that's sort of active. Oh, sorry, it's okay. The last sentence. Collaborative research, implications of solar radiation management for strategic behavior and climate governance. Todd Sherry pulled this one in while he was here. He's since left, but Dave McAvoy, who's here, is involved with this one. And they're using the lab to collect data. And they're investigating how essentially individuals and nations make choices about whether to deploy and adopt unproven and perhaps risky, I guess is the word, technologies to address important global risks, obviously climate change being really the one they're focusing on. And they're looking at the solar radiation management technology, which, as I understand it, is when you inject reflective particles into the stratosphere. And so they brought in a good chunk of money to look at that. So there's just some ideas of the really the non-traditional side of the center. And again, we get to piggyback off the great faculty that we have in the department. So yeah, the next one, please, Christine. And then we have the traditional side, which is sort of the area that I spend most of my time doing within the center, which again is really economic impact studies. There are other types of analyses that we could look at too, and we do from time to time, but these are the main ones that we look at. And again, this is all soft money kind of stuff. But this helps bring in money for the center. It also helps us employ students to help out, which we try and do as much as possible. So that's just some examples. Basically these impact studies trace the flow of money through a regional economy as a result of some event or an economic entity. And so we look at these direct and secondary flows of money, and overall how this flow influences economic impact with respect to employment, labor income, gross regional product, local taxes, things like that. And so we did a study, excuse me, a 6-month study looking at the effect of COVID on the regional economy. We've done work just more locally, Appalachian Theater. We've done stuff for App State. Just 2 weeks ago, we were out there collecting data for the High Country Beer Fest. And so we're always trying to do as many of these impact studies as possible. So that's the sort of traditional side. And, in terms of reputation, again, we're lucky because we have such a great faculty to lean on. But just to brag a little bit, researchers rank in the top 5% in the world in the areas of environmental economics, in the top 10% with respect to resource and energy economics. So that's a pretty impressive statistic, I think. In terms of connecting with the center, I just feel that the CERPA can touch all the colleges around campus. I think there's sort of, there's 2 ways of looking at it. One would be to augment existing studies. In fact, just yesterday, I was on a chat with Melissa Weddell in exercise science, and she has a grant looking at improvements in recreational infrastructure in this part of Western North Carolina. And so she was interested in adding an economic impact element to that and a non-market valuation element. So we're jumping on the back end of that one. And so there's an example of how we can add to existing projects and hopefully make it a stronger overall research project. And the other side would be to try and create new synergies, which is really what this is all about, right? Talking to people across campus, making them more familiar with the Institute and the centers, and hopefully from that, understand how we can get more collaborations. And so, I've mentioned the examples really of what the specific areas that we're most interested in, but if you got any ideas you want to chat, then please get in touch. We'd love to talk to anybody about the center and how we can work collaboratively to move research forward. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Ash, and thanks all three of you for giving such a good flavor of what you do and how people can plug into that. And so with all three of those kind of specialty mission areas in mind, and each of them also has kind of an outreach applied implementation mission as well that they talked about. What RIEEE is really kind of focusing on together is on building capacity for the intersectional research we can do together and amplifying the successes by kind of taking stock of and looking for ways to leverage and double dip on everything that we're good at. And so where that plays in is, making sure that we don't try to be everything to everybody. We want to ask ourselves what's unique to us here. What can be done here that nobody else can do, or that we can be a major international or national partner in? And then what problems might we tackle that beg the question, well, who better than us, for all the reasons that we have talked about? And so what we do at the institute level is really bringing convergent transdisciplinary scholarship methods, drawing on an evidence basis in a couple of different disciplines that are nascent but growing. And that's kind of where my own heavy foot lies academically, is in the science of team science and integration and implementation science. And so bringing that to help teams work together, and also drawing heavily on the unique living laboratory opportunities we have. Jamie talked about some of that here with the New River Light and Power, and with a lot of the different facilities, the Nexus facility, a lot of different places that we have to draw on, including the experimental economics lab that Ash talked about. And there's tons of data networks kind of in the SAEREC line of thinking throughout the New River, throughout the local environment. And we can draw on that and kind of capitalize on making sure that we help people articulate how they can connect into those living laboratory opportunities as different researchers that can leverage that as a strength. And through doing that, connect with each other. And then there's also these intersectional opportunities that we really focus on, which really draws on both the first and second thing I just talked about too, but pulling in beyond the 3 E's that have centers dedicated to them, but looking for places to include equity, which underpins all of the sustainability in any of these areas, and humanities, health sciences, the arts, to make unique, high impact research, and also create well-rounded scholars that are ready for these kind of complex, wicked problems we talked about. So some examples here are getting to tie into the new Department of Rural Resilience and Innovation, which we're really excited about because, again, it's anchored in this problem-centered pulling together, spanning boundaries to kind of answer a set of problems that we're well suited to. Lots of effort in sustainable agriculture and food security, and sustainable growth of rural civil infrastructures in all the meanings of infrastructure. So social networks, resiliency of health systems, ecosystems, housing availability, all of those different things. We want to pull those together. So really the intersections of the Venn diagram and how we can help you do the most is where the Institute is focusing our energy. And so we also want to, we keep saying amplify. So what do we mean by this? And what we want to do is help faculty and teams really get the message out there in efficient ways, both for networking and collaboration connections and for dissemination of our successes. That, you know, Appalachian State is where you come if you want to move the needle on the things that we really need to move the needle on in order for a sustainable future. And so to do that, we want to, you know, look for ways we can put ourselves on the map. Sometimes literally, like we're trying to bring people to us. Everyone knows that everyone wants to come to Boone, right? And so using that to our advantage and using this beautiful place, but also kind of convening and getting the message out about, you know, what are we famous for, right? And so some of these things, this is by no means exhaustive, but these are the first things that sort of came to our minds, and just getting the message and the knowledge out that, for example, we operate the 2 highest elevation weather stations on the Earth. That's kind of big news. We are the stewards of the oldest database that tracks atmospheric carbon emissions, dating back to 1751, thanks to Greg Marlin. That's some of these superlatives are really helpful, not only to explain our impact, but to compel further investment in App State as a leader in these fields. We've got comprehensive data on the oldest river system in the earth, depending on who you talk to, the very oldest, or at least the top 5. And then we have really unique, special Appalachian regional relationships and North Carolina relationships with different strong networks, including, for example, Indigenous community leaders that are partners in important research. So these are the kind of things we want to know from researchers that we work with so that we can help elevate, amplify, and connect. And so I said we would also move to talk about how we do the things we do. So how do we do big things together? At the broadest sense, everybody that chooses us, either RIEEE or one of our centers that's part of us as the administrative unit for a proposal, gets some pre-award support from staff who assist with the PI-led grants, and also some post-award support. And that looks like helping with administrative streamlining, helping you spend the money once you get it, you know, being familiar, sort of cradle to grave with the whole project so that we can help with those things. And those are non-trivial because departments can get really overloaded. So we really like to build relationships with faculty that go through. This also has an effect on the F&A, which not everybody might know of, and we want to make sure that that's known. And so for projects that carry F&A, the indirect costs get distributed differently. And so I'll give you a second to digest this, but these are 3 comparative charts of how the flows of the returned F&A are distributed. And the first one is one of the centers is the administrative unit. So you choose CERPA, SAEREC, or the Energy Center. The second one is if you choose RIEEE as the administrative unit. And the third one is you don't deal with us at all. We're not part of the picture. And so the important bit from a PI standpoint is that if you use the RIEEE or the centers as a partner on this and choose the administrative unit, then your returned F&A portion triples. So you get 15% back returned to you to use instead of 5%. The difference is if you choose a center, then the center gets 10% and RIEEE gets 10%. And each of us give a piece of that up to the PI. So we end up getting some. You may want to choose a center if what you're trying to do is get it so that, for example, since CERPA has two constituents from the economics department on I'll Choose You. And if you would like for SERPA to have more discretionary money to reinvest in different activities and investments and ways to try to grow the impact that you can make as a center, then you may want to choose them. And that's the reasoning there. But either way, you get 3 times as much. And the other important bit is that your department and your college give up nothing. They still get their normal percentage. The Office of Research, the Vice Provost for Research, is giving up the extra 20% as a way to prioritize and invest in research in these key strategy priority areas. Okay, so then the next thing we do, a little bit up, this is where it comes from assist to enhance. And so if it's something that overlaps with one of these working groups that you saw traditionally cluster, then the RIEEE leaders and staff would get more involved in trying to sustain momentum between and for individual grants. So that's support for working groups, research development support activities, maybe some help organizing your writing team, help amplifying, bringing some of these science of team science practices into play, and then helping you think about how you could tie into other networks, either on campus or off campus. So those are things that align with these working groups that are investments in sustained momentum and growth of research programs. And then if it's totally a slam dunk for one of the sweet spot areas that we've talked about, that we think is going to support researchers across campus in putting us on the map and making it known that we are leaders in these areas, then we might even lead. So some examples of that are, we've just won NSF Science and Technology Center as a group. So Appalachian State is one of the 5 hub areas. There are 9 total universities. It's led out of NC State, and it's on phosphorus sustainability. And so I happen to be a co-PI of that, and I put some time and effort into trying to do this because it can bring in between 4 and 40 faculty members across the university over time, each with a student to mentor. And so that's the kind of thing where we might really dig in and invest, because what we want to do is elevate how many people across campus get to tie into these things. So feel free to bring those to us as well. We've mentioned research infrastructures a few times, so I just want to touch on this for a moment. I'll talk about it in more detail at our working group session next week, which will again also be recorded so you can see it. But we think about the different research infrastructures that all of us use. We've talked about the economics lab, experimental economics. There is the Blackburn Vinoy estate with a sustainable development farm. These are things that you can use and put in your grants and really harness to drive the research and enable unique research. And so those come in many different categories, but they can act as multipliers, not only for your own grants, but for intersections between other scholars that can utilize those. So we're mapping those across campus and across our working groups in categories of physical infrastructures. Both of the ones I mentioned fall into that category, and those are kind of easy to imagine. It's like a place, a thing you can use. There's also data and information infrastructures, and those take just as much maintenance. So the CDAC database that I mentioned that Greg Marlin brought us to be the stewards of, that's a database. Nobody else can just have that. We have that uniquely, and we can draw on that. And then also it's important to recognize the social infrastructures. Takes a lot of energy, takes maintenance, and they're also unique to us. So these are relationships, working groups, stakeholder established networks, these types of things that we can build on, draw on, strengthen, invest in. So those are the kind of things we're mentioning. And when we see that there are many different people using the same research infrastructures, we call that a convergence platform. That's something that so many people that can use that really puts us on the map and helps us stand out and grow our research programs. I'm going to pass it to Grace for just a couple of coverage of historical information on CERT and next events. And so there you go. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Christine. Many of you have probably know us because of the concert program, we get the word out almost every year and solicit proposals to the seed funding mechanism. And I think Christine mentioned it earlier, but Greg Marland, who's on the call, was the one that came up with this lovely acronym, a complex acronym for complex work. But the program was launched in 2013, and it was initially co-funded by several colleges. That hasn't been the case since, but it was a joint effort across colleges to get the funding together in the first place. We've held 8 competitions since then and granted over $200,000. But really, one of the things that's really exciting and impressive looking back for us is how the reach and the breadth of participation across campus. So we've supported 68 faculty members that represent 21 departments across 4 colleges and some other units. And that kind of reach and cross-unit collaboration is exactly what RIEEE was founded for. We are evolving our processes where the funding priorities change a little bit here and there, but we're also working to hone our reporting metrics and the types of things that we really want to see come out of these seed grants. If you're curious, you can see all the past competitions on our website at rieee.appstate.edu, including the solicitation and all the awards that were made. So the concert program is long running, but we also thought for this kind of reintroduction to campus that it might be, we've talked a lot about what we want to do and how we're looking to get there. But I also, I think others could, it's helpful for us and maybe for others too, to kind of hear a little bit about where we've been in the past. So we are a very active unit in post-award administration and pre-award. You know, if we submit proposals that aren't funded, as much as 17% of the proposals in a single fiscal year in the last 5, we've been the administrative unit on. That's pretty significant. We also manage one of the larger award portfolios on campus, where we were running a close second behind College Access Partnerships, but I didn't look at that in these last couple of days to see where we are now, but we're always one of the largest award portfolios. We also handle a significant share, of course, because of our mission and our purpose, of the multi-PI and cross-college or cross-department activity on campus. We were designed in 2018, RIEEE was designed to operate across the college structure. So we don't actually report to a dean. We report through the VPR to the provost, and that was really to enable this kind of cross-unit collaboration. We're also one of only a few units on campus outside of departments that have a dedicated post-award grants manager. That's Caitlin Maneely here in our office. I think she might be on the call, but she, that dedicated only to grants and the small state budgets that we manage here. So none of the normal academic program related burden on administrative staff that we see in departments. And I think that certainly alleviates some of that pressure from department administrative staff and is a value add for sure. We're also one of only 2 units that have dedicated research development staff on campus. Karen Fletcher, I think, is here, and GRS does a wonderful job centrally helping all of campus, but it's only us and IHHS, I think, are the only 2 units, to my knowledge, at this time that have research development staff. And that's me, part of my part-time role is in research development, but we are looking to grow our services there and do more. We think that's definitely a place where we can add value in helping get bigger and more competitive proposals out. And I'll also mention, so we have these upcoming events. Just want to be sure that they're on your radar. As Christine mentioned, on Tuesday next week, it's an odd time, so we'll record it, and we may we'll have other ways for you to give input if you can't attend. But we're really looking to develop and hone this working group model as our kind of framework for developing or for offering research development services across campus. So this is an opportunity to share our thinking so far and how we envision that happening, and solicit some input on utility and prioritizing services and tools that we plan to develop. We're also holding 2 focus groups that will help IT and as part of their broader IT planning process to hone the research drivers of the campus cyber infrastructure needs. So this is working toward that kind of effort that Christine mentioned about developing shared infrastructure. And we hear often that cyber infrastructure is a hindrance at times. So we're looking toward an NSF program and weaving this effort into ITS's broader planning efforts. We'll also have 2 more of these planned for the fall semester, the webinar series, and the content and purpose of those is evolving. And I'll turn it back to Christine because I think that's the thing she wanted to speak to next.
Thank you so much, Grace. We want to leave you. I know it's we're at the top of the hour. So the next things are just know that on our website, you can find all of our different calendar events. There's the Google group that you can join to receive information from us. And you can always email us with ideas and questions at RIEEE@appstate.edu. And the last thing I'll put up here and then let us go is that we want input on what would make it worth your while to get together. And, you know, all of us are part of different intellectual communities. We want to think about being flexible in the different format, and we can rotate through them. We can be responsive to what people in the RIEEE community want to do together. And so you can feel free to think about this, put it in the chat now, or just email us when you think of it. But some of the options are, you know, invited seminar speakers, examples of other centers and institutes that have done a lot of good things and what they might have done, you know, just sort of like you would have in any field, have different examples to outside people. We could have a discussion group format, reacting to shared material. We could do a panel. So anyway, this is just an invitation to be part of how we spend our time together, but we want it to be a watering hole. And in future times, we plan for it to be much more interactive. This time we kind of came out of the gate saying, here we are, we're back, we're reintroducing ourselves after an interesting COVID year. And we hope that you all consider yourself a part of the team in building what is useful together. So thank you all for your time. Really appreciate you joining and staying a couple minutes. And for anybody that would like to stay and wants to discuss, I'm happy to stay. Maybe we